Hello, I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. These episodes are short with a fair amount of tough love to the industry as a whole. You won't find this your normal SEO podcast with interviews and tricks and tips. I speak candidly to the human and business sides of SEO. So here goes. Welcome to episode 37 of Confessions of an SEO, year 4. What a week. First off, I published a video on how SEO testing has changed since Google pulled the plug on their index cache, or I should say the cache of their index. There's a lot to unpack in there. Where to start? I guess I'll find a way. We'll get to it. Secondly, Lars Lofgren, founder of Stone Press Agency, published an impressive dissection of what he has discovered as separate sites and subfolders on major enterprise news sites like Forbes and USA Today. And I'm going to suspect even more once we get down to it. Remember last week's episode about how these enterprise news sites are exempt from the helpful content system? That site reputation abuse takedown in late spring took down sites like Forbes and USA Today, and as well as others, that the sections of their sites that were devoted to coupon codes, where they were taking over SERP results for things like Subway lunch coupons, things like that. So anyway, looking at that, it was a great article. It is a great article. And we get to see two things at exactly the same time. One, how fast news sites with big pockets can retool, and confirmation that these news sites, they kind of, at least they behave as though they are exempt from the helpful content system. And I'm going to say, like, I'm pretty much the only one who says that they're exempt, but it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, right? I don't need a letter from Google to tell me. I like to equip myself with every possible tool to help me do my best work. And not all my tools are software. One of them is Magic Mind. I use their mental performance shot, and I'm happy to say I now have it back on automatic order. I had let myself run out, and I felt good. I figured, well, I'll get around to it, once I get a few more things done. And then I totally forgot about it. So after about 10 days of not using it, I could really start to feel what it had been doing for me. People asked, does it work? Well, if you're using it, you're like, yeah. But it's when you stop using it, even accidentally, when you kind of get a better picture. Things that were in focus started getting a little more unfocused. And I kept noticing, wonder what's going on. And that is one of the reasons why I use it. And if you're curious to try it yourself, you can find it in, if you're here in Texas, you can find it in HEB. They have a store locator on the Magic Mind site if you are anywhere else. And if you're like me and you love it and you want to get a slightly better price, go to magicmind.com/SEO pod. Yeah. And for a limited time, you can get up to 48% off your first subscription. Or if you just want to do a one-off, you can get 20% off for a one-time purchase. Now, use the code SEOPOD20 when you check out. They also do really good community work. For each bottle sold, a portion goes to mental health charities that help the homeless communities here in the United States. All right, so what happened this week? I published a video on LinkedIn and the Crawl or No Crawl video channel for daily SEO testers. I don't mean people who do experiments on their live production sites necessarily. I mean SEO HTML testers. Part of our challenge is that we have to isolate our pages in order to come up with an evaluation. Did what we thought happened or what, right? So that's the entire crux of SEO testing. We can't test and use a keyword like best locksmith in Philadelphia. Too many results. To even probably get it in the top 100, we'd have to optimize it. And by the time we do that, that means we've introduced like a gazillion ranking factors. So no, that's why we don't use normal keywords for testing. What we learn from testing can be applied to normal search phrases, but you can't test with them per se. Now, for this reason that we need to only compare our pages, even if we want to do like what I do, if I want to know if my content is even going through the indexation system, I need to be able to use something to help me find it and to isolate my page. So if you're looking at the calendar on September 16th, that was a little over 2 weeks ago, Google started to shift what appears to be either, whatever portions of the page they want to, they crawl it all, but they don't process it all. So it's kind of like to look at that. Is it longer to process? Did they crawl it? So without having the ability to use this fake keyword, and I may not be saying it exactly correctly. Let me rethink that. So the 16th is when I would put in a fake keyword and I would get a thing that basically said, we don't know what that word is. And maybe you meant this. And it would give like a list of different things. And so a lot of my testing that I was checking on the 16th had been based on my original method. And suddenly I'm like, why can't I figure this out? Why can't I confirm or have proof that this page, not just that Google Search Console said it was indexed, but that I could find it by one of the words on the page and it was my fake keyword. So that's what changed, right? So I was doing that. Normally, I find that out in 24 hours. Now, they may be taking longer, like I say, to process it. Maybe they're assigning a priority to processing now. I can't speak to why, perhaps, because I don't work for Google. So that's what happened on the 16th. Then, on top of that, this past Monday, a week ago, they killed the cache. Google literally used to keep a copy of the entire internet, and we could find it. So the previous week, when I couldn't find my keywords per se by themselves, I was checking the cache. Ha! So I could confirm that the first pass had occurred because Google had processed it and put the page into the cache. I have also enough data that showed me that a page that was not in the cache, or I should rephrase that. If a page is in there, was in the cache, that meant that it had gone through, at the very least, the first pass. Now, for those who aren't aware, Google does 2 swipes against our new content. One where they pull the HTML and process it. Kind of picture the Cookie Monster eating up everything that they could, within that HTML source code. Now, the second pass is where they go back when they found something in that first crawl that isn't in HTML format. Specifically, let's say JavaScript packets that a site uses, so a page will either have functionality or just to speed things along. In that second pass, Google grabs the pieces and puts it through a rendering machine. Think bacon. No. Do not think bacon. Makes me hungry. But it translates the JavaScript into regular HTML. And that second pass takes a lot more resources and computing power than the first HTML crawl. So here we are today. We're knocking on the door of Q4 in 2024. And it doesn't take a genius to see how Google is trying to probably seal up any costs that are deemed unnecessary operations, like fully processing the rendering of every single page within hours of being published, or having a backup copy of every page on the internet in the cache. I do hope someday someone will have enough information that they can provide an estimated cost savings of those efforts. Google is a private company, so they don't have to share that information. But I think it would be interesting to get an idea of the costs that were slashed by essentially the introduction of one and the elimination of the other. But here's why it's so important to me specifically. When everything changed on the 16th, I had the cache to make up the difference. So cache confirmed that first pass when the fake keywords had not yet been processed. Am I impatient? Yes. But I like to think of it as I just don't like to take no for an answer. That sounds better, doesn't it? And this was a huge thing for me. I test the indexation and I share it on crawl or no crawl reports. And just when I got to the point where I had 100% indexation rate, Google goes and throws this curveball. Thankfully, as an SEO tester, and you don't get to be one long without knowing that you have to have the ability to adjust. When we started testing back in 2015, it was essentially crude testing. And I think over time, what we saw in our testing communities was a slow incremental addition of other aspects that slowly raised the threshold of what even got indexed. We went from single pages where we could get a result from in less than 5 minutes. I mean, sometimes it would take literally 1 minute after submitting and we would have an answer. And then we moved to a point where we had 10 pages of similar content on a domain, all random alpha, and not getting indexation unless we had a privacy policy or terms of service as part of our testing domain. Ultimately, as I found in my testing, the helpful content system raised the bar even further. I should say higher. And now, with these last two things that Google changed, it's kind of hard not to take it personally. I mean, it's like they really don't want us to know anything beyond what they provide for us in Search Console performance data. But I'm happy to say, despite all the setbacks, I developed a variation on the testing using the fake keywords that we have had in our pocket for a long time. But I'm using them in a different way, and that has the SEO testing ship righted, at least for my purposes. Some of you know I've been checking Wix Studio out lately. It's this cool web development platform aimed at agencies and enterprise. And it's all about helping people create stunning websites with some serious business muscle behind them. And we're talking full stack solutions, managing multiple sites all together, and even some AI magic thrown in for good measure. As you know, I'm impressed by their nifty bot report that kind of lets us see what Google's eyeing on our client sites. So if you're itching to level up your design game at scale, Wix Studio might be worth a peek. You can even whip up your own widgets and interactive components. They have a Wix app market, and you could actually sell those on their marketplace. And also this week, Wix just dropped a new SEO course. It's perfect for newbies looking to get their feet wet in the world of SEO and site performance. They have expert tutorials and webinars that are going through all the basics. If you're curious, you can give it a look at wix.com/studio. Who knows? It might be just what you need to take your web design skills to the next level. So now to Lars and Forbes, these news sites. Ain't they stinkers? Last week, I explained why the site reputation abuse policy on these news sites had to be manually enforced. In essence, for the inverse reason, while the helpful content must be algorithmically enforced. A friend of mine shared the article in which Lars showed how he discovered that Forbes is running a sub-WordPress installation, which in layman's terms is essentially a separate site in performance, but it's not seen as a separate site by visitors, nor, from what we can tell, Google. Now that sounds sneaky, doesn't it? I'll put the link in the article in the description. The title is CNN and USA Today have fake websites. I believe Forbes Marketplace runs them. Saucy. But yeah, they are. And like before, these types of sites are ranking for terms related to things like renter's insurance, cryptocurrency, retirement, VPN reviews, and more. Now, to be fair, I did not find Domino's coupon codes because that's what those sites were targeting before. So apparently, I'm not the only one that does not take no for an answer. Now, the only reason I bring this up, of course, is to provide yet another way of how influential the helpful content system is. The only way these sites can get away with it is because they are news sites. I think when the time comes and we look back at the helpful content system because we'll know it and understand it better, I call helpful content that one rule to ring them all, except news sites. I think it will be obvious how much leeway these sites have received by virtue of being excused from the helpful content system, which please be advised, if you're an affiliate site and you start to do this same thing, you're thinking like, if this works for Forbes, I can do that. I would just like to set my watch for some site distraction. And I don't mean for Forbes. I mean yours, if that's your takeaway from this situation. I know if I took this material and spent the resources and time and money to prove that a normal site can't get away with this, I'm sure the general response would be closer to, well, that happened because you suck as an SEO. So let's just go through cost-reward ratios. They're real. So I'm not going to waste my time to do that. But I do hope if someone insists on doing this or has the resources to do it and you are not using a news site, please let me know. I want to make sure I can sing your praises either way, because if you make it work, that's great. And if it gets decimated, that's great. As I often say, I don't have a horse in this race. I share what I see, whatever I can prove evidence for or provide evidence for, what Google confirms in their API documentation link about the helpful content system. That's really something because they do. And you can find, I wrote an article and you can find it in my LinkedIn profile. It's called The Helpful Content and the Google Indexing API documentation. So what basically boils down to is I want data. And so far, the data has only served to validate my tested theory. Even Google has confirmed it about the helpful content. Now, this is truly a case where these particular news sites, they can do this thing where they can have all of this affiliate material in there. But we cannot. Anybody who's a regular affiliate site or site owners that are trying to monetize without actual ads, it isn't going to work for you. At least how things are structured right now. I know people are complaining to Google in a way that reminds me of a lot of the complaints about smaller sites saying that Google was killing their site and preferring big brands over hardworking affiliate sites. Well, another way to look at it, and a better complaint, would be, why do you hold my site to the helpful content system guides and let news sites who are not compete with me? How is that fair? You know, this is both an exciting and irritating time to be in online business. I've got more to say about this, but I think I'm going to take this week to kind of mull it over and come back with my perspective on it. That's it for me this week. If you need help with your site, you're not sure where to dig, text me. My specialty is forensic SEO. I find weaknesses in sites and bring solutions to strengthen them and create more success through the website. Now, to stay on the cutting edge of the state of indexation, as well as having first access to my indexer, which is in development, and we should have it fairly soon. Remember, it's software, so fairly soon does not mean next week. Check out Crawl or No Crawl on Substack. And if you have an account on there, free or paid, you will get alpha access to the indexer. All right. Thank you for being a listener. Thank you for the sponsors. If you have questions or topic ideas, I want to hear from you. You can text confessions at 512-222-3132. Thanks again. And until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.